This is Paul Shireman today on the 42nd edition of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today we have a very special guest, Ruth Hanford Morhard. I'm going to give you more of an introduction, Ruth, in a minute. Ruth has written a fascinating new book entitled Mrs. Morhard and the Boys, a story about a single mother, Ruth's late mother-in-law, who created the first boys' baseball league in the depths of depression to help her son and other people. Before I go further with an introduction of you, Ruth, I want to recognize some things going on at RainierAvenueRadio.world. We're an online station based in Seattle. Today, as my engineer, I have James Gerd. James also the host of the After Dark show at our station. I want to mention we have a lot of good things going on in our sports department. Rick Dupree hosts a great show, One-on-One with Dupe. Granville Emerson, Renault Laurent, also known as Pep, our co-host of a fun show, Lidline Sports. Masvita Murari is a host of Seattle Sports Weekly. Pat McCarthy and Masvita also host a show on the Seattle Metro Sports Athletic Conference. And Mark Bryant has a fitness-based show, Fitness Corner. I want to throw a few plugs out for a couple of my Rainier Avenue Radio colleagues in the sports department. So my guest today, Miss Ruth Morhard, let me make sure I got these facts down about your background. Let me know if I have anything wrong, but I understand you grew up in Connecticut, and you grew up as a rabid Boston Red Sox fan. You became a Cleveland Indians fan when you moved to Ohio. Ruth is a mother and married to Al Morhard. Career-wise, Miss Morhard has been a senior executive with philanthropic and arts institutions. She's been a consultant. Ruth is the author of the 2013 book, Wired to Move, Factors and Strategies for Nurturing Boys in Early Childhood Settings. Ruth has a BA degree from Skidmore College and a certificate in, I believe it's creative nonfiction from Stanford University, both great institutions. Today, Ruth, we're going to have a great chat about your career a bit. We're going to have a special focus about your new book, Mrs. Morhard and the Boys. This book tells a fascinating story about a great lady, Josephine Morhard, in her life and what she did in establishing the first Little League Baseball league in America. I had a chance to finish the book this week. It's a very inspirational story about perseverance, kindness, and many other great traits. Miss Morhard, Josephine Morhard, that is a very unsung hero. Well, Ruth, first of all, thank you for coming on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio.
I'm delighted to be here.
Great. So you're the author now of 2 books, and why don't you share with us for a minute how you got the writing bug?
Oh, I never had the writing bug when I was young. I was interested in a lot of other things, music and politics, and a lot of things that didn't have much to do with writing. But I kind of fell into a job in the public relations arena and found myself doing a lot of writing, and I found that the more I wrote, the more I liked it. So I was writing everything from annual reports to speeches for executives to video scripts, and I just loved the writing part of it. And always had in the back of my mind that one day I was going to do something on my own, do something that I enjoyed, write something that I enjoyed writing. So that's kind of what brought me to this point.
Yeah, you have 2 books out now. That's definitely an accomplishment for sure. So the subject of your new book is your late mother-in-law, Miss Josephine Morhard, who passed over 40 years ago in 1978. You indicate in your book you did not know your late mother-in-law that well, but tell us some factors that gave you an idea to write a book about Josephine's life and what she did in starting the first boys baseball little league.
Well, I had just met her son, Al, and she had just passed. Well, I actually met her just a few weeks before she passed away, and I found her to be she was 87 years old, but her mental faculties were all there. She was sharp as a tack. She enjoyed an occasional Manhattan and had given up the cigarettes a long time ago. But she was just a fascinating lady, and I didn't think much more of it. And then she passed, and we were his family. I was helping his family clean out her house, and I saw this huge can that said "Bring Up Baseball" on the side. And so I asked her son. I said, "What's that about?" He said, "Oh, that's a film the Cleveland Indians made of her. She started the first Little League." And, of course, I took that all with a grain of salt and said, sure, she did. But I was curious enough to want to see the film. So we rented a 16-millimeter projector, and it was one of these huge cans of film. And saw her. There she was with the boys in her backyard, with people who were leveling a field to make a baseball diamond, taking her turn at bat. But the film actually went into the whole origins of the baseball leagues, and it was absolutely fascinating. And and so I had in the back of my mind, this is a great story, and somebody should be telling it. And that was a long time ago. But the pressures of work and family and, many other things just kind of kept me from doing anything about it.
Well, it really is an interesting story. Go ahead.
Pardon me?
Go ahead. Yeah, I think you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
No, in recent years, I have decided to carve out a little bit more time to do some of the things I enjoy. And so I decided to start doing some research. And the more I researched her life, the more I saw that her own life story was just as compelling as the fact that she started these leagues. And the fact that she started them at the time she did, in the middle of the Depression, was quite amazing to me.
What a woman. I just read the book this week, and I there's just so much history in the book. And so I don't want to give away, it's funny, when I have authors on, I'm very careful because I want listeners to learn more about the book, but I don't want to necessarily give away the whole book. So I'm going to be sort of a delicate line here, Ruth, so let me do my best.
Okay.
But why don't you share, I learned the story a little bit more this week when I finished the book. Well, why don't you share with the listeners how Miss Morhard started the Little League Baseball Association, the Cleveland, Ohio area, and mention the perseverance on her end to even get the league started.
Well, first of all, you have to remember this was the middle of the Depression. She's a lady. Well, the other thing that's pretty interesting is here is a woman who was married and divorced twice. She was a single mother raising two children.
Right.
In an era when that just absolutely did not happen, and women like her were pretty much ostracized. But Mrs. Josephine Morhard was very independent and very determined, and nobody was going to tell her that there wasn't something that she could do if she wanted to do it. Well, both of her husbands were not exactly the kinds of men that she should have chosen. Probably, there was a lot of drinking and abuse, and she was seeing her young son, who was acting out, possibly because of the turmoil in the home. And she realized she's a woman raising a son, and she doesn't have the male perspective that she felt that he needed. And she was seeing him starting to act out, have some pretty bad tantrums, and she just wanted to do something. And one day she had just happened to be looking out the window, and he was holding a stick and batting it at a tennis ball, and she thought, well, maybe baseball's a good answer to it. So she decided right then and there that she was going to explore whether finding him a baseball team, and so she went to the mayor's office, and she cajoled the mayor into letting her use the field by the town hall, and she got a bunch of neighborhood kids together, and they started playing a very loose form of baseball. But at least it was something. But she wanted to do more than that. So she was just absolutely brimming with ideas. She loved the Cleveland Indians, and she thought, these kids ought to have uniforms like the Cleveland Indians. So she went down to the local sports store, and one of the people there was a scout for the Cleveland Indians. His name was Laddie Plasek. And he agreed, she charmed him into agreeing to provide uniforms that were identical to the Major League Cleveland Indians uniforms at cost. And so, they decided to name the team, which was now probably just a few kids, but all the time the other kids in the neighborhood are seeing them playing, and they come in and they decide to join in. So pretty soon she had 9 kids on the team with Little Indians uniforms, and was trying to find other teams to play. There was some CYO, Catholic Youth Organization, a couple of them in the area that were also were looking for somebody to play. And there was a bunch of boys down in a town about 30 miles away that wanted to play. They kind of had a loose team pulled together. So she started her teams and her leagues. But her idea was to model the teams after the major leagues. And before you knew it, she had a junior American League, a junior National League, and again, all of the teams were miniature versions of major league teams.
Well, your mother-in-law did quite a job getting that league together. This is Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Ruth Morhard, author of Mrs. Morhard and the Boys. Go to ruthhanfordmorhard.com to learn more about this great book. So one thing I got out of your book, Ruth, is it tells a great story about a fantastic woman, your late mother-in-law, Mrs. Morhard, but it also gives the reader some 19th century and 20th century American and university history. Was that one of the goals of your book, to give readers some education, insights about what was going on in America and Europe in your late mother-in-law's life?
Well, yes. I really felt that you can't really tell her story without telling it in the context of the times. The times today are so different. I mean, today there are lots of single women raising children. We're not in a dire situation like the Depression. There were not support systems like we have today. So I really felt it was very important to kind of give a sense of what the times were like. And as you say, in Europe, because her father was an immigrant who came to this country at the age of 17 and wanted to go into farming. He became a tenant farmer. He wanted to replicate the life he had back in Europe. And some of the things that were going on at the time really, to me, were related to the story I was telling. And plus the fact I really love history.
Definitely a lot of history in your book. And one thing that I enjoyed in your book, some of the history in your book, is that the history of the Great Depression and World War II is obviously very interesting. But I thought it was interesting you got into some late 19th century American history as well. You discussed the Industrial Revolution and some of its effects a little bit. So I just want to share that I thought you gave a history of your late mother-in-law's life up to about 1944. I think that was a way for the reader to learn more about history. So I just want to share those comments with you. So something else about your mother-in-law, as you mentioned a couple minutes ago, she was a single mom of 2 kids. She organized a little league, twice divorced woman, very strong person. I could tell it was hard for her to take no for an answer. Would you describe Mrs. Morhard in any ways as a feminist of her era? And did your late mother-in-law ever consider herself a feminist in any ways?
I don't think she even knew the word. She would be considered that today. Certainly, she was just. I think she was definitely a feminist in the sense that she never felt that there was anything she couldn't do. You know, she grew up on a farm. There were 17 children, which was quite amazing. But she was the one her father relied on the most. She called herself a tomboy. I mean, she was plowing the fields when she was a tiny tot. She couldn't even stand up well enough to follow the harrow. She was driving teams of horses to get coal when she was 5 years old. I mean, she loved it. She loved it until the point where her father was giving her far too much to do, and it was too much of a burden. And then she left home. Now, I can't imagine many other young girls of 12 years old leaving home and going out on their own. I mean, I kind of look at her as a Tom Sawyer kind of character.
Oh yeah.
With the kinds of adventures she had, but she was very independent, and I think she was independent in large measure because her father had given her so much freedom in terms of doing things on the farm. I mean, she for a time she loved it, but I mean that spirit of independence and determination was core to her being, and she always had the feeling that just because She was a woman. Don't tell me there's anything I can't do, or don't tell me that when she was young, don't tell me that I'm too young to do anything. If she wanted to do something, she was bound and determined she was going to do it. And she did.
Very courageous and determined person, Josephine Morhard. This is Paul Schneiderman again on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Ruth Morhard, author of Mrs. Morhard and the Boys. So I got a question for you, Ruth. Why do you think Mrs. Morhard's story has not been very well known in what she did in starting a Little League baseball organization for young boys? Why isn't this a story that people didn't learn about 50, 60, 80 years ago, whatever?
Well, I think they did. They did hear about it at the time. The Junior American League, the Junior National League were featured in newspapers across the country, and I think may have inspired a lot of people in a lot of towns across the country to follow her example. She even had a little World Series in League Park, which was then the weekday home of the Cleveland Indians, and that was in 1941. I think it has been eclipsed by the fact that her leagues ended. And the Little League, the Little League started just not too long after she started her leagues. But there was it was just a couple of leagues in a small town in Pennsylvania when she already had American and Junior leagues and a little World Series. But her leagues, unfortunately, did not continue. The war just made everybody's priorities change, and it was very hard for fathers were getting called to war. Gas was being rationed. It was very hard to get the kids to the games, and mothers were working at the time. So she just couldn't hang on. The Little League did hang on, and they had one advantage that she didn't have. She was largely funding the leagues through fundraisers and through her own pocketbook, where the Little League. They had sponsors. Each team had sponsors that would contribute to the team. So to me, that's a very good reason why the Little League continued.
Good history and interesting background. So in doing some research about your book and this story, and the name Carl, I believe it's Carl Stotz, or is it Carl Stotz?
Yeah, right. He started the Little League.
Right, he started the Little League. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing his last name. It's either pronounced Stotz or Stotz. And
I'm not sure either.
Okay. So Carl Stotz, we'll call him Stotz for a purpose today. He's given credit often as the founder of the Little League. I did a little online research as well, besides finishing your book. But you brought this up in a way a minute ago. It was your mother-in-law who actually established the first Little League World Series game in a Major League Baseball stadium before Mr. Stotz's league in Williamsport, Pennsylvania got going. So how did your mother-in-law feel that the baseball Little League based in Williamsport, Pennsylvania never has really recognized your mother as the founder of the whole boys baseball Little League concept?
Her objective really was never recognition. And I certainly never talked to her about this, but my sense is that she had accomplished what she wanted to accomplish. What she was in it to help these boys grow up right. These kind of ragtag kids in the neighborhood. She wanted to teach them discipline. She wanted to teach them good habits, and recognition was not what she was after. She loved what she did, but she didn't seem to care whether she got the recognition or not. The fact that all of these boys turned out, well, I don't want to give it away, but all of these boys turned out to be great men, great citizens. That was a great accomplishment as far as she was concerned.
Well, I guess I have a little perspective here, Ruth. Just from a historical standpoint, I would like to see your mother-in-law get a little bit more recognition because, as you brought up in your book, Mr. Stotz himself consulted with your mother-in-law about getting a Little League going.
Right.
So I think there's a little more history that your mother was involved in. Whether she wanted the recognition or not, I think she deserves some more. So you mentioned in the book that your husband, Al Morhard, who later became a successful attorney and judge based in Ohio, and I believe your husband also played college football. Why don't you share with us what the Little League baseball meant to your husband and his development as a person?
Oh, it was very instrumental. He was a kind of a troubled kid. I mean, he'd been through a lot. He'd seen his father chase his mother around the dining room table with a butcher knife. Those things don't go away. He didn't have male role models. His mother got wonderful men to assist. She got the Cleveland Indians to teach them baseball skills. She got a fairly well-known sports writer who was then very young and coaching high school. His name was Hal Leibowitz, and she got him to be an umpire. And she only selected people that she knew were going to give the kids the right motivation and give them good lessons in life, which she did. Every kid on the Little Indians had to do a good deed before they were allowed on the field. So these kids are down at the local grocery store and they're helping people carry their bags. Her main focus was just that. It was teaching these kids lessons, teaching them discipline, and she certainly, that certainly applied to Al. I mean, he credits her with everything.
Well, I can tell that Al got a great value system through his mother, and it seems that his experience playing Little League baseball played a role in his development. So your feedback is great. Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with Ruth Morhard, author of Mrs. Morhard and the Boys. So one thing that you brought up a little bit in this interview that comes out quite a bit in your book is the influence the Cleveland Indians had in your mother's Little League and just their general influence in the Cleveland community and during that World War II, Great Depression era. And we hear a lot of debates. We've had these debates in Seattle. We lost our NBA team over a decade ago about the role that pro sports teams have in communities. It becomes almost like a philosophical question. But what did you think about the role the Cleveland Indians had in Cleveland during that era? It struck me as a pretty positive role. Would you agree with that?
Everybody loved the Cleveland Indians. Well, first of all, basically during the Great Depression, baseball was an escape. It took people away from their troubles, and people just loved baseball. And if they didn't have more than 10 cents, they'd go to the baseball stadium and get a hot dog to eat. But first of all, Cleveland was a very different place than what people think of Cleveland as being now. It's still a great sports city, despite the Cleveland Browns, who are coming back, by the way. But back then, Cleveland was one of the most prosperous cities in the nation. The Indians were the sports team. Nothing else was close. Even though we actually had the Cleveland Rams at the time, which are now the Los Angeles Rams after several other moves, and are in the Super Bowl. But the Indians just almost adopted the Little Indians. Alva Bradley was the owner, and he did all kinds of things. I mean, not only letting them use the league park for the Little World Series, but he would bring all the players down to games. He furnished all the baseballs. Roger Peckinpah was the manager, and he was highly involved. His son played for the team. Bob Feller, Jeff Heath, who was a great ball player of the time, Roy Weatherly, and other players helped out with teaching baseball skills, and they'd come down and help with the fundraisers. And Jeff Heath actually gave Al one of his major league bats. Mel Harder lived in the neighborhood, and he would always be at the games when the team was in town.
Well, in reading your book, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, he used to have the boys over and give them popcorn and soft drinks and regale them with stories about the major leagues. So the Indians in every way were very involved. The scouts actually, the scouts and some of the players would hold baseball clinics and show the boys how to hit, pitch, field, catch. They were wonderful.
Well, it seemed like a family atmosphere with the Cleveland Indians and the Cleveland community at that time, based on your insights today and in reading your great book. So I want to move ahead here for a second, Ruth. And in September 2017, Time Magazine had a cover story about how Little League and high school sports have become a $15 billion industry. Where do you think your mother-in-law would be today in how Little League sports have become?
I don't know. I think that she would never have looked on it as a business. She, like I said, she was much more interested in the boys and their development. And I think there are some. I've read a little about the Cal Ripken League, and it seems like they try to do some of the same things. I'm sure there are many Little League teams and coaches and that still have some of the try to instill some of the values she had, but she would never have looked on it as a business. Obviously, she was pretty much supporting the teams on her own, along with fundraisers.
Well, Ruth, believe it or not, we have less than a minute left. I can't believe how fast these interviews go sometimes. Throw out another nugget or two about your late mother-in-law in your book. Do you want to share with the listeners that we haven't gotten into yet today? I know we didn't get into everything, but throw another nugget or two out about your book and your late mother-in-law.
Well, I think that she is a sterling example of determination, perseverance, and one of her mottos was, no matter how many times they knock you down, get up again. And that's one of the things that she instilled in the boys. And through her life, she had a lot of very, very hard times. But she always got up, and she always made lemon out of lemonade, if you will.
Well, Ruth, I really enjoyed our discussion. All the best with your terrific new book. Let's stay in stuff, and thank you for coming on Sports and Stuff.
Thank you very much, Paul.
You take care.